What's going on, guys? In this video, I give you a reality check on what it's really like to be an entrepreneur. If you're new to the channel, welcome, where I help entrepreneurs take their business to the next level. And if you have an idea for starting your own business, I'll help you build the right entrepreneurial mindset and share the best practices to take those first steps on your idea. Now let's get right into the video. We're talking about the startup curve. Oftentimes, entrepreneurs are glamorized by the media. They have cool cars, they hang out with cool people, technology, travel. Now, some of these things can be true in entrepreneurship, but the reality is there's a big grind and it's not as easy as a lot of people think. The startup curve illustrates that perfectly. To start out with the curve, we have time on the x-axis, met by happiness on the y-axis. Now, what's really interesting is as time goes on, if you take a long-term approach, happiness ends up winning. Kind of looks like the stock market in today's world, up, down, who knows, super volatile. That's exactly what building a startup is like. When you start out, even before you start out the company, you are at baseline happiness. As you start the company, you have this initial enthusiasm, and this initial enthusiasm makes you feel happier. You're excited, you're making first steps, you're taking progress, and stuff is starting to happen. It's amazing. What happens relatively quickly is you hit this reality check, and this reality check starts to set in, and I would say the reality sets in when you're back at your baseline and just below your baseline happiness, and things start to get kind of scary, they get sketchy, and a lot of things we're going to talk about what it's really like to build a company start to happen. And this can go pretty deep, it can go pretty negative actually, and it can go pretty negative for a pretty long period of time. Along the way, you're going to pivot your business, you might have little bursts of happiness, again, think stock market volatility, you might have these ups and then downs and then ups and then downs, and as you pivot and experiment, you start to make some progress. Eventually, something you're working on actually starts to gain traction. It starts to work, and you start to see this uptick in happiness from this almost depressive state, this trough of sorrow, and then reality check hits again, and you kind of go back down. Eventually, you find what's called product market fit. If you're building a technology product or you have a service, even if you have a restaurant, this still applies. You start to figure things out, and after a period of time, you hit this growth trajectory and your happiness level continues to rise. This is called scale. Now, this is a very simplified version, the startup curve, the startup timeline, whatever it is you want to call it. The reality is, a lot of people along this timeline, they actually quit working on their startup about midway through. And they have this sort of, if you are an entrepreneur and you've been through this, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You'll make it maybe a few months or a few years into the journey, and you're in this trough of sorrow. You end up having what's called a negative happiness, and your perception of building a company, building a startup, is more in this negative state. And if you can never break out of this and never go past these negative dips and eventually reach this happy point, which happens at different stages for everyone, different traction points based on your business, then you're gonna have just a negative perception of building a company, because building a company is really, really difficult. Now, the timeline here can range from a matter of months to a matter of years to a matter of decades over an entrepreneur's career. You can think of this as not just one startup, you can think of this as a career in entrepreneurship. So you might have multiple businesses that you see initial traction and complete failure. You might have 5 companies along the way that fail, and eventually one of them will work. And by work, that's a really loose definition. It could mean significant impact. There's a number of different advantages and benefits of starting a company, but the reality is it's really difficult, and you don't really see a lot of those benefits on the surface. Like I said, if you go on social media, if you follow myself on Instagram or other entrepreneurs, you get this fake image of what it's really called. Not to say that people are intentionally putting out a fake image. Of course, we want to share the highlights of our lives. The reality, it's mental fatigue. It is super, super difficult to build a company. It's almost impossible to take your mind off the business. And when you think about something over and over and over and you focus on it 24/7, it takes a huge mental toll on your body, on your mind, on your persona as a human being. And that can be extremely challenging. You live in the future and you have to build what's missing. This is really the centerpiece of how entrepreneurs operate, how your mind works. You have to put yourself in the future, and you have to build whatever it is that's missing. And this can be really challenging. It can be really frustrating because you don't necessarily see the world the way everyone else does. That's why you started a company in the first place. So there's definitely a ton of mental fatigue. there's also a lot of noise in the world. And I have this quote up here: only a startup founder loves to work on Sunday because everyone leaves you alone. This couldn't be more true. Oftentimes, we're so focused on what we're working on, everything else essentially seems like a distraction. It could be Netflix, it could be family, it could be your friends. They don't really know what you're doing unless they're an entrepreneur themselves. So it can be really, really difficult. It can be lonely. Ties into number 2. You don't have anyone to really talk to that's in the same scenario as you, right? If you don't know anyone who's an entrepreneur, you can feel like you're navigating uncharted territory, uncharted waters, and you're out there and you got to swim to shore, and maybe you've never swum to shore in that scenario before. So it can feel really lonely, and that's why it's super important to find good co-founders, other entrepreneurs, a network like myself. Let me know in the comments what you guys are working on. It's really difficult to go on your own in this journey in entrepreneurship, in business, and in life. So make sure you have good co-founders. If you're a solo entrepreneur, totally cool too. Find a network of entrepreneurs that can support you, and you can bounce ideas. And through the digital age that we live in now, it is absolutely magnificent to have so many resources available to you. You also get to deal with all the crap. And the reality is, there is so much crap in building a company. A number of different things that you wouldn't even think about pop up as soon as you get started, and you have to be the one that deals with them. There's no one else. This isn't working at a massive company where there's an individual assigned to dealing with each segment of crap. As the entrepreneur, you deal with all of it. A few specific examples that explain this: you are the first to know all the good news, all the bad news, and all the ugly news in the company. And ultimately, you are the one that is going to deal with it. All these different challenges that can pop up, whether it's finance, HR, your product, engineering, distribution, service, food if it's a restaurant. There's so many things that can go wrong. It's up to you, and that's the reality. You also feel an intense amount of pressure. You can feel like the world is coming down on you. You have so much to deal with. There's so much pressure in this scenario. You are not the boss. A lot of people think you're the boss when you run a company, even if you're working with a number of other people. They are not employees. You work for the team members. You work for the employees. You are everyone's employee. And even if you're working on your own as an entrepreneur, a solo entrepreneur, your customers, your clients, you're working for them. They don't work for you. And that delivers an insane amount of pressure. You work 7 days a week, 365 days a year. It's really difficult to separate yourself from the business. I recommend finding hobbies, exercising, family is great, right? So have something else outside of your business. But even then, you're still gonna work 7 days a week, 365 days out of the year, and there's a lot of risk associated with it because there's no recipe for success. There's a reason why there's the trough of sorrow, and there's a reason why it can be 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, 4 years long, because there is no formula for success. If there was a formula for success, everyone would start out at our baseline happiness level before the startup, and initial enthusiasm would continue. We know that's not how the world works. And this model right here actually applies for anything in life. It could apply for athletics. I know myself as a former and current competitive swimmer. You have this initial enthusiasm when you start to train, and the reality is you're actually in hard training until you see the end result way down the road. It is a long-term journey. This is a marathon. You feel great at the beginning in a sprint, but it comes down to the wire at the end. It is a long-term process, and all of that comes down to a lot of risk. You have to take those first steps. There is no recipes for success. There is financial risk. There is time risk. The opportunity cost. I did an awesome video that I'll link in the description about how to assess risk and how to be more risky, how to take risks, calculated risks, of course, because in entrepreneurship, that's the name of the game. If you don't take that first step, if you don't take those risks, you're never gonna make it to the end of that startup curve. And in your entrepreneurial career, you're gonna end up down here. Remember, buy low, sell high, right? So you start here, you wanna continue on that journey until you reach the top of that happiness. Now remember, it's not all doom and gloom. There's a number of exciting reasons why people start a company in the first place. For me, I'm very passionate about what I do. At My Swim Pro, we get to help millions of people around the world improve their performance and health, doing it in a sport that I love. It's a rewarding experience. And here are 4 ways that being an entrepreneur and taking that plunge and taking that risk can be extremely rewarding. Number 1, you get to shape your own destiny. you are in control. Although you are not the boss, you're working for other people, you are in control in a sense in a lot of different ways of potentially your schedule, the actual thing that you're working on, the direction that you're taking it. If you're the founder, if you're the CEO, ultimately you have control over that. If you haven't taken on any significant investment, you will continue having that control through the life of the company, through your entrepreneurial journey. Number two, you get to work on something that you're passionate about. I mentioned myself, it's swimming, it's fitness, it's athletics, it's health and wellness, it's technology, all of these things merge together. And whether you're passionate about a restaurant, whether you're passionate about B2P, enterprise, SaaS, software, ad technology, whatever, it can be really boring to one person, really interesting to another. So really focus on what you're passionate about, and it makes it all the better. Number three, create value for many people. Now, this is an amazing element of being an entrepreneur because you see a problem in the world and it is your mission, it is your job to solve that problem. And depending on how big the problem is, you could potentially help hundreds, thousands, millions, billions of people. Some of the biggest technology companies in the world, their products are used by billions of people. These numbers are so massive, it's insane. And they're not doing it for the potential financial reward. As entrepreneurs, we're doing it because we see a problem that we want to solve. And if it happens to be a problem affecting a lot of people, that makes it even more rewarding because we can help that many more people. And number four, you get to meet incredible people. The passion is true in all entrepreneurs. You can see it, you can feel it. Hopefully you can feel my energy in wanting to help other entrepreneurs because I truly believe that entrepreneurs shape not only the economic system, but the world as we know it, because the greatest innovations have the greatest impact. And that's what this is all about, finding problems and solving them. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I want to recommend another video. I'm wearing the Startup Weekend shirt, how I turned my idea for my swim pro into a company in 54 hours. I'll make sure that's linked in the description. Another video I highly recommend is my TEDx talk that I gave, how to go from idea to app of the year by Apple. I share the My Swim Pro founding story in that TEDx talk. So I'll also link that in the description. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you give it a big like, and of course, subscribe to the channel for more entrepreneurial tips, how to take your mindset to the next level and achieve innovation in entrepreneurship. Let me know in the comments what you guys are working on. I would love to hear how I can help you grow your business. And of course, wishing you guys the best. Take care, stay safe, and keep hustling.